Greetings, nerds. This is Scene and Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. I'm pretty sure that was our shortest pre-show talk ever.
I think it was.
And it's mainly, and I'm just going to bust your chops, but it's mainly because I just brought you up to speed on how my day was going. And then I was just like, well, you want to get started? You're like, yeah, because I can just tell that you really want to talk about The Boys and House of Dragon tonight. So this should be entertaining.
It should be entertaining. Yeah, we got dragons and Supes.
The second Game of Thrones spinoff, Night of Seven Kingdoms, has started filming in Ireland.
Yeah. So this is, I know there was another spinoff, I think, that the other show, but I think one of them was canceled, but this one continues and did start. And the full logline for the series is a century before the events of Game of Thrones. Two unlikely heroes wander Westeros, a young, naive, but courageous knight, Sir Duncan the Tall, and his diminutive squire, Egg. Set in an age when the Targaryen line still holds the Iron Throne, and the memory of the last dragon has not yet passed from living memory, great destinies, powerful foes, and dangerous exploits all await these improbable and incomparable friends. So that's what the show is apparently about. I guess it's 100 years after House of the Dragon, and 100 years before Game of Thrones proper. So didn't see when this show is anticipated, but I would assume sometime in probably 2025 or 26 if they're filming now.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I always get concerned by too many spinoffs, and this Game of Thrones for the past few years, there has been so many announcements about spinoffs, and so far we've only gotten House of Dragons. So now we're likely to get this one, and we'll just see, because you can only do so much with the source material.
Yeah.
You can I don't know. It'll be interesting. And I mean, why not just dive back into Westeros and start off with House of Dragon? Season 2, episode 1, Son for a Son. Prince Jace goes to the Wall and attempts to get the Lord Cregan Stark to uphold their oath and lends troops to their blood war. I think that might have been the tagline, but that doesn't sound like the tagline, so apologize. But yeah, we start this episode in Westeros, or not in Westeros, in Winterfell.
We do, yeah. And for me, I did not watch Game of Thrones. For our folks who may remember our discussions of House of the Dragon, or if you're joining us for the first time, I'm the newbie here to the Game of Thrones universe, but I have to say I do like this. I mean, I know enough about the series that about the Starks and Winterfell, and it was I liked actually the way that they started the second season, not picking up immediately from the events that happened at the end of season 1, but really sort of starting to expand the universe a little bit to some of the other families, because really season 1 just focused so much on the Targaryens that we're now seeing the as we get closer to the Dance of the Dragons, other people getting engaged in the story. So I was fast. I liked the exposition there. It was very, very helpful, and really enjoyed how things started out.
Yeah. It was. It was good to see old Winterfell. So I guess what did you overall think of this episode?
Overall, I thought it was a solid return. It was reorient everybody back to where things are. We didn't have any crazy time jumps. We had enough of that in season 1. It seems like this is maybe about a week or 10 days after what happened with Luke and Aemond, and with Vagar killing the poor kid and everything happening there. But also, of course, in true fashion, what is it about first episodes where you have a what the fuck moment? Because I thought, as as things were going down at the end of this episode, I couldn't help but also think back to the season premiere of this series with Viserys' first wife and the events that happened there, as far as like, oh my God moment. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and it's just great to be back in this world. I as you can tell, I really did miss it and excited to be back.
Yeah, definitely. That brings up what I was going to talk about before. Is I didn't get a clear sense of how much time had passed, because I feel like Jace grew up in like. So I don't feel like that. I feel like it probably is the same actor, and it's literally taken us 2 years.
Yeah.
Or like from even the time when they shot season 1, like that kid grew up. And so I'm processing in my head. I'm like, so like how long has passed? Because this kid grew, these people did not.
Yeah.
I don't know how tiny Aeon's kids were, but I don't know. I just feel like because the actor who plays Jace had a significant growth spurt.
Yeah.
It kind of worked against for me as a viewer. I was like, throughout the whole episode, I'm like, it was in the back of my mind. I'm like, but like how much time has passed? That's seriously. Yeah, can we understand here? Like, I know time. I don't think it was a week. It doesn't feel like it would be a week. I mean, yes, he has a dragon, so he would be able to get there, but Winterfell is a ways away. Like, anybody who watches Game of Thrones knows that there's a distance. And I mean, for some characters, it takes a full season to get from Winterfell to King's Landing and then some. So I just, even a carrier pigeon and how that was all even sorted out. I'll give him like a few months.
I think what to your point there, I think when we had the events at the end of whenever they did send Jace and Lucerys out, I mean, to the south, because I think they sent Lucerys to the south and Jace obviously to the north. So I think maybe that will account for the timing thing that you're talking about here, before the events that happened with Aemon and Lucerys whenever he was killed.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that will make up some of that time difference as well. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's been 2 years since we've had this show, so it just was. Yeah. That was definitely on my mind. So I guess the best way to divide this episode moving forward is to first talk about Team Green with Allison in charge. What are you? Give me some of your thoughts about Team Green and the inner dynamics that we see during their first small council meeting and some pairings that are happening.
Yeah. So this episode really reminds me of why I'm Team Black. I mean, as far as why Aegon is even king. I mean, he's so feckless and seeing Otto trying his best to keep this kid under his thumb, as far as like whenever they were there in the throne room and all the small folk were petitioning the crown for various things, and Otto flexing his powers as the hand, basically the Shadow King, and trying to basically, of course, I mean, I get where he was coming from as far as from the tactical standpoint, because they do need these resources and because they are prepping for war. But at the same time, it's just a constant reminder for how Aemon, but for his impulsive qualities and stuff, will probably be a better king for wartime than Aegon ever will be. So there was that piece. Of course, there's the whole Kristen Cole of it all, and Alicent. Alicent's been she's well, I'll put it this way: Kristen Cole just needs to get over it. I mean, already he is. He's holding the grudge for a long time.
Yeah, which makes him the ultimate villain of this entire series and super annoying because it was such a brief thing between him and Rhaenyra in the beginning of the first season. And then from that point forward, all of the decisions he made, Hightower Otto was behind the overall plot and moving the pieces in ways, but because of this man's broken heart that he still is not over, it just is. It's the hypocrisy of it all.
Yeah.
Because both of them and they do a good job with Alicent because while you simultaneously she's on the wrong team. She has been for a very long time. You understand why she's on that team, so you can't fault her. You do understand how her father moved her and put her in these situations and both got her into a position of power, but also at a very high price. So you understand all of that. Mm-hmm. But she also has some lines of hypocrisy, especially with Sir Christian, that you're just like, girl, wake the fuck up.
Yeah.
Also, you need to get over your girl crush because your son killed her son. And also, why are you bringing up the fact that your son lost his eye and no one was punished? Again, your son killed another person's son. So...
Yeah.
It's so, but at the end of the day, you also, because the actresses who played young Alicent and Rhaenyra did such a good job that you still can't fully hate Alicent. You cannot like her choices, but you can't hate her because you also see her subtlety in trying to make what she would hope happen occur. But that's because of everyone around her and their motivations, that's never going to happen. So it's that just allows me as a viewer to focus all of my pure hatred on really Otto and Christian. Because Christian is just so fucking annoying. He doesn't even have any power. He's not even that bright.
Nope. Exactly.
He's just a walking dick, literally.
Yes. So literally. Yeah. But I'm glad you. Speaking of Alicent, though, I think another thing too, which I think I want to say the show is trying to. Well, and when we get to the blacks, we'll talk about this a little bit more. But I think it's, from what I understand, I think the book that this series is based off of was told by an unreliable narrator and really painted things in the light most favorable to the Greens. And so I think, to your point about some of Alicent's choices, especially hearing what she wanted to hear that night when Viserys died versus what really was intended, was, we're starting to see some of that choice that she made unravel for her, because as she noted to her father in this episode, whenever they were sitting around the small council, they were undermining her, and to the point where she really, to the point where she's like, look, if y'all keep undermining me like this, my sons are not going to listen to me. And so, so to your point about people with Cole has no power, and Alicent's influence and over things is starting to diminish as well, because Otto is flexing even more over Aegon and at the table.
Well, Otto's not going to have that power for long.
Yeah. So I know, Sarah.
You have Larys lurking in the background, maneuvering positions, because Otto had that power because of Viserys. Mm-hmm. And so he was able to do that, but Aegon is not Viserys. And and it was proven in this episode how much he is like his father.
Yep.
And yeah, of course I guess I don't really understand what your point was about unreliable narrator, but I do agree that they did a good job of showing, now that the husband's dead, the queen had power for all of 5 minutes. Because now that the king has passed, it goes to the heir, and that is not the queen. So she can only wield power so long as the king listens to her, and arguably that's with any of the people on the small council. So
yeah. Well, yeah, and my point about that was, I think the book it was more painting the blacks as the folks in the wrong here.
Oh, well, I mean, I think the writers, the screenwriters, definitely were Team Black. Yeah. Because I've seen so many people talk about this show, and I have yet to find anybody who is not Team Black, like, arguably. But I still, despite being on Team Black, everyone still seems to be like, but Allison is not the villain necessarily.
Right.
Like, because they've done a good job of crafting her view and letting the audience know why she made these choices or how these events occurred, and she only had so much power. So and so they're doing a very good job of that, especially with female characters. Yeah. I mean, the smartest person on Team Green is a female, and her name is Helena, who, I don't know if how many people forgot about this, but it occurred to me about 3/4 of the way through the episode. Helena is still their little sister.
Yeah.
So I've heard about all the shipping happening, like there's a Helaman, or I don't know, between Aegon and his sister, and I'm just like, yeah, you're talking Game of Thrones when you're talking about incest, and you're actively rooting for it. I don't. Yeah. But actually, the actors got a hold of that, and they started discussing if they should actually play into that with some of the scenes. So everyone be on the lookout, because maybe those weren't or are not Aegon's actual children. We don't know.
Yeah. You don't know.
They're definitely a brothers.
Yeah.
They're definitely right. Dear Lord.
I'm just waiting for Aegon's kids to show up from the brothels.
Yeah, seriously. And I made note of that line right when she said it early on in the episode about being afraid of the rats. But again, the writers know what they're doing in terms of pacing, because they insert that line with far enough distance from the ending so that you forget about it.
Yeah. And
then there's one little hint where the people who are hired, the assassins that come into the castle, they decide to play into that and like, oh, these are for the rats. These traps are for the rats. And then you're reminded of it. But again, still, it's such a subtle hint that it still doesn't even click until you see Helena. And bravo to that actress. Like, what a line delivery. They killed the boy. Mm-hmm. And it just made me think back to season 1. I have not rewatched season 1. I don't think ever. But there was an episode, I think it was, they were mourning someone, I think Damon's first wife's death. And she was talking about spiders. Yeah. Obsessed with spiders.
She was.
So I'm arguably, out of all the characters, I'm most curious about what's going to happen to Helena right now. I'm very curious. And I like how you see that the brothers don't really understand why what they did is leading to a war, but which going into that final sequence, and yes, we'll talk about Team Black, but I do want to hit this while we're on Team Green.
Yep.
I was like, we're not gonna end the first episode of season 2 by killing Aegon. It's Aegon, right? Aemon. We're not going to end the first episode that way. There's no way in hell. So when they couldn't find him, I was like, yeah. So now what? I had no thought until I saw Helena. Like, they're gonna. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But again, you saw. So it's Aegon, and what's the other one's name?
So there was, as far as
Aemon and Aegon.
The two now.
Who's on the throne?
Who's on the throne? Aegon II is on the throne.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aegon,
the anagram of Daemon.
Right.
So
Aegon, you saw early on in the episode again, right during the scene of the with the rats, wanting to spend time with his son.
Mm-hmm.
And there was he's not the best husband in the world, but he seems to be actually a pretty decent father who really liked his son and would play with him. And it reminded me of some scenes with Viserys that we saw last season. So, and then flash forward, we get the scene at the end, and she ends up telling them which one is the son, the heir, and you're just like, well, he didn't get it. If he didn't get it now, he's definitely going to get it now. Yeah. He's definitely going to understand. And boy, he might turn Joffrey, or might turn away from. He might lean more into Hightower-esque, conniving, revenge-seeking than what we saw in this episode, which I felt like he was very much his father's son.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that this will definitely light the fire in him to do whatever is necessary to get vengeance on his son's death, for sure.
And it's the perfect definition, representation of what revenge is and why it's such a fool's game. It's because it's like tit for tat, for tat. It's never a game.
Exactly. I mean, because that was, because Aemon's error, and wanting to be better than his uncle, as far as Daemon, being the best fighter, et cetera, in the land, basically set all this whole nonsense in motion, as far as whenever he lost control of Aegar and killing Luke, and then so there we have the whole eye for it goes back to the eye for an eye, but also now son for a son, and but it's just a comedy of errors that and bluster is going to cause so much tragedy and pain in Westeros.
Right. And to your point about why this is such a Team Black written perspective on this story, it goes all the way back to the eye. If they had not, they could have written that scene so that Jace and Luke were the villains. Mm-hmm. But we saw that scene and it was like, no, they were on the defense. Yeah. So Aemon lost his eye, but that was literally a defensive move there. Mm-hmm. So any sympathy that could have been, and they started to, very early on, Aemon didn't have a dragon. He was made fun of. His cousins, his whatever you want to call them, however, uncles made fun of him, and he was picked on. And then he grew up and he became the biggest force of power that they've seen since Daemon. So we're gonna get that duel in the future, but because now Daemon is behind killing Aegon's son and Aemon's nephew in pretty much cold blood. So pretty bad way. So, and that brings us to Team Black. So what are your thoughts about Team Black?
Well, whenever we first get the first visit with Team Black, we see Rhaenys, and she's coming back from being on patrol, and of course, speaking of Daemon, Daemon's flexing again as far as wanting to get out there and let's take out Vhagar, and she's like, no, look, man, I'm tired. And I just love how that scene played out, because she flexes how much of a badass she is, especially when she has no fucks to give, because whenever Daemon was trying to order her around, it's just like, oh, if you were king, basically get out of my face, man, get out of my face. But also in that same scene, we do get the situation. We do get Daemon. It's like, look, you had the opportunity to end all this, and you didn't. So it reminded me right out the gate, all the dynamics of these characters, as far as why this show just crackles when you watch it.
Well, yeah, especially since she's his former mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And grandma to his 2 daughters. So it's like the incest breeds more complications.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I swear, I feel like we need I need a chart when I'm sitting here talking with this show about you, to keep track of all who's kids who's.
Yeah. That's why I love the Starks. I love that we saw Winterfell specifically. We also saw the Wall. All of that very important. But then I'm like, oh, crap. How many names are we gonna have to learn? Last names are fine. I heard the Tully. I heard the Greyjoy. I hear the Baratheon. I know Lannister's in the house, King of Coin. But all of that. But again, it's not the last names, it's the first names. And then if you look at, because I've now seen, unfortunately, some family trees, if you will, and they also do this lovely thing. Two generations later, now you're this person, the third.
Yeah.
Great. Because that's not more confusing. Maybe if you didn't do that, we wouldn't be in this situation at all. Whatever. Whatever. Aegon the Second. Well, he could have been Aegon 1.5. That would have happened. Yeah, and another very unexpected thing. Well, 2 things is we don't see Rhaenyra until 26 minutes into the episode, and then we don't even hear her until maybe 36 minutes into the episode.
Right.
And she has 1 line, and she wants Aemon Targaryen. That is her single line, and yet she has maybe 3 scenes, a lot of emotion. And it's very different from their use of Alicent, where we get a lot of Alicent and we get a lot of the dynamics on Team Green, which it's also, if you look at this episode, it's pretty dominantly Team Green, because I feel like there is a lot more maneuvering happening politically there. Yeah. Team Black, they've had their cause since the first season finale. We know. So they're in grief, while at the same time we see the ships, we see Kralos, and we start to understand about some other things that are happening beyond Dragonstone. So while at the same time there's not as much political activeness happening. So we'll see if that changes come episode 2, if there's more focus on Team Black or not.
Yeah. I know speaking of Rhaenyra, I mean, I think for me, you're right. It was her searching for Luke, and of course, coming upon the beach, and finding the dragon wing, and really the whole the funeral scene whenever she and Jace, and I guess the other, I can't remember the third little son. What's his name? But
I think Joffrey.
Huh?
It's Joffrey.
Okay, that's right, Joffrey. Yeah, I forgot his. Yeah, but yeah, just the pain that whenever they finally do meet up, because Jace learns up in Winterfell whenever he gets the message about what has happened, and when they all reunite, just the pain that this was, that the family was dealing with here. That was really, like you said, I mean, it just really reinforces. We really didn't need to. I think they did the appropriate amount of time with the Targaryen, with Team Black in this episode to just really remind everyone as far as what this family's dealing with right now, and the loss that has occurred. Right.
You needed this shadow of it. Yeah. But you already knew what state Team Black was going to be in heading into this episode. You knew Daemon would want to fix everything, and Rhaenyra would be a mother mourning her another child's loss. Yeah. But the real intrigue would be, well, what's going on with Team Green and Westeros, and how they just also arguably have more players.
Yeah.
So at this point, and somebody tweeted something last night that I saw, and I'm very curious if this happens this season. Is they had a picture of young Alicent and young Rhaenyra, because that was season 1, right? Mm-hmm. And then next to it, they're like season 2, and they had a picture of Aemond and Aegon. And like, that'll be interesting if it goes from these quasi sisters and this story about them to this brotherhood that parallels so much of what glimpses we saw of the dynamic between Viserys and Daemon in season 1. So that'll be interesting. I know they're the bad guys, and I'm not changing teams or anything, but it is a perspective that, if done correctly, could allow for more love to be given to them and understanding, while at the same time being like, yeah, but you still killed this person. Right. And you lost your eye because he kind of deserved it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. And also, somebody on Team Green, just kill Christian and you'll have my allegiance. Okay? Yeah, kill Christian. My allegiance is yours.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. I know with Atlanta, we didn't, what's going to be the fallout now of her, because she barged in.
We already knew.
I mean, everybody knew. I mean, Larys knew.
I don't think, like, there's Helena knew rats and spiders. Okay, yeah. Helena, yeah. I don't think it's that secretive.
Yeah, no, but like,
and for those who are saying that Aemon doesn't know, because there is a conversation. If Aemon didn't know after that conversation where Christian talks about his mom, yeah, he knows. He knows.
Sure. Yeah. That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. But one other thing about with Alicent and Rhaenyra, as far as the grieving, one of the things that I think they were trying to like paint the Greens in a softer light was, of course, her, whenever she was lighting the candles, and also still to my point earlier about how, both Rhaenyra and Alicent were still trying to resolve this issue without any bloodshed, as far as the heirship of the crown. But then, of course, At least there were at least there was still some some good feeling there, and that there was still a chance that things could be fixed. But of course now there's after what Aemon's done and now what Damon's done, I mean that's all blown to hell. But it was just a nice moment, especially when whenever, because we had that scene with their loss and the funeral pyre, but also Alicent recognizing the losses that
the candle scene, the lighting of the candles, and she even lit a candle for her dead mom. And I disagree. I don't see, as I know she's on Team Green, but she did that, and I don't know if that came before or after the conversation between Christian and Aemond, but I think that her choosing to light a candle for Luke just supports what Christian says about how there's still love. Like, despite everything, there's a tether she has to Rhaenyra that can't be cut for some reason. And that's when Aemon then responds and says she has love for her enemy. That's just foolish, or she's stupid, which she kind of is. And arguably, but that's what love is. At the end of the day, love is a stupid thing. It makes you very naive. And just talk to Sir Christian. He can't get over having his heart break. Yeah. My God. But I still don't necessarily, what I'm trying to say is I don't necessarily view that as trying to make us present a soft, like a kindness gesture from Team Green. It's a gesture from Alicent.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I wasn't saying the whole team itself. Yeah. It was just for her.
Yeah, because and you talked a little bit about this when you brought up Rhaenyra, and the show still primarily is about these female characters who exhibit power, but given their circumstances are also very powerless. And it's very fascinating to watch, especially for those who watch Game of Thrones, just because I continue to remember Game of Thrones predominantly is male characters and male vying for power. And this one is it's such a maternal show. So, I mean, how many births did we see last season? Yeah. Now we season 1 was season of births. Yep. Season 2, season of deaths. Okay. Yeah.
So much so that now we're just like, season 1 we had with the opening we had the births and all the bloodlines flowing and stuff. Now we're just got the tapestry to pull all the stuff together.
Yeah, which great call to change that intro, and I hope we get a different one in season 3, because I think that it was smart to change it to that tapestry, because it just reminded me, I know that Westeros isn't real, but it feels very medieval, and that's a pastime women would do, is make these tapestries. And so to have that as your opening sequence, again, it just relves in, the captains of these teams are female. So it's just, and it's a war between moms, especially if you're doing son for son or son for grandson. Yeah. So, well, I think that wraps it up. We got 7 more episodes of House of Dragon to go, and now we have to talk about 2 episodes of Boys. I will be honest, I watched these episodes, but I still have to remember what actually happened. Not that they were bad, just that. And it's not, I'm also not saying House of Dragon season 2, episode 1 wasn't my favorite episode ever either. It's a slow burn, and then it gets you at the end, and then you're like, oh my God. But we're easing back in. The Boys, also arguably did a little bit of a slow burn, where they were setting pieces up and things in motion, and Homelander's getting old.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yep. Yeah. Literally, yeah. Homelander. Oh boy. Yeah. And I love how they like use his narcissism, and with just jumping right into, since you brought up him getting old, how they with his one, obviously whenever it first happened, and as far as seeing his midlife crisis, I was like, why is he keeping his pubic hairs? It's like this most random thing. I was like, is he going to try to clone himself or something? I mean, that's where my mind went through first. But then once they started, things sort of flowing through the show, and it was really identifying that he was having this midlife crisis. And then, like, whenever the team was the marketing team and Sister Sage deconstructed, analyzed him standing there, and as far as whenever he was in street clothes, about the wrinkles and the bleaching his hair and all that kind of stuff, I was just like, yeah, man, my man's going through that midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Which again just narratively drives so many things, as far as what, on top of the already malignant narcissism. Now you got, that with a midlife crisis. It's like, this guy's unstoppable. This guy's going to be unstoppable.
Yeah, but it's also, it goes back to what I always bring up when we talk about Homelander, is like they've managed to always have some semblance of humanity, and nothing is more humane than the idea that I'm going to die one day.
Yeah. Father Time's undefeated.
And so like I'm getting older. And then, and I think it was the perfect time for them really to delve into that, considering now he's an active father in his son's life. And so now it's about legacy. But for Homelander to actually be a supportive father, his narcissism won't let him fully do that. Because you brought up Sister Sage, and in this first episode, I also love Homelander isn't dumb. They Ashley throws it out as maybe her joining the Seven, and then we learn from A-Train that she's the world's smartest person, such a lame superpower, and he immediately listens to that and is like, okay, I'm going to use that piece of, and then I did not expect him to dress down when going to see Sister Sage.
Yeah.
That I was just like, wait, we're not in a suit. What's going on here? This is so interesting.
It was.
And so refreshing. And then even their back and forth conversation. I want you in the Seven. Nope. I'm a black woman 1,000 times smarter than you. Your ego can't handle that. It's just was perfect.
Yeah.
And I think just like Homelander, we needed someone to be in that room with him or by his side who would actually be able to go tit for tat. And granted, we did not need him to make his point by almost trying to get the Deep to blow A-Train. No, that wasn't necessary. But it also tells you something, that there was a long moment where I actually did think they were going to do it, because
I did too. Yeah.
Some very sick stuff before, but they actually didn't. And I was like, well, okay, this is a different version of stakes. Okay. Oh my God. Yeah, I that was arguably the best part of this episode, for me at least, is introducing us to Sister Sage and everything going on with Homelander. I just want to get this out of the way. I was so confused about what was going on with Black Noir. Because the last I knew, he was dead. And did I miss something where they hired an actor, or are we supposed to pick up on that throughout like these first few episodes?
I think we were supposed to like pick that up and that.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
that the actor who, whoever was playing Black Noir in the Dawn of the Seventh film now is just going to fill in
Got it.
for him. Yeah.
Okay. Because for the whole episode, I was just thinking to myself, do I have to go back and watch something from the previous season? Because I'm like, I missed something here. What is he doing?
Yeah. And but it also really, what got me, what clued me into that was like how chatty this Black Noir was. I'm like, especially like whenever they were, they had got the Homeland, I guess the Homefronters, to come meet them and whenever he was like all jazzed up to like whenever they gave them the assignment to kill those three guys, I was like, okay, yeah, now I get it. He's gonna be the comic relief for the Seven this year.
Were you surprised at some of Sister Sage's like politics?
No, so I wasn't, because I think and this just gets to the larger thing about the show, because I know this season there's been a lot, there are comments about how this is like the lowest rated show on the tomato meter, blah blah blah, as far as with audience scores and stuff, and I think it was one of those things like, okay, her politics and stuff, we're like, she's in on the joke, she's in on it, she knows, she gets it. And I think so. I wasn't surprised as far as her. So I think with her, to answer your question about her politics, she's and you said it earlier. She's like, I know I'm a Black woman in the room with these guys. No one's going to listen to me because of the way I look and the way I am, but she could be the person behind the guy who, to make him look good, and at the end of the day, she's the brains of the outfit, and whatever her ultimate plan is, which in this, which we see was to get the Starlighters and the Homefronters to like fight, and then set it up so her guy could come in there and save the day, to be, to reestablish himself as like the Great Hope. She was, so she gets it, and that's what I mean by. She understands like how to manipulate people and how to manipulate the political issue, the political sense of the day and times, to be able to achieve her ends.
Yeah, which are Homelander's ends, because the thing is she's always going to be a puppet to him. Yeah, like it'll be interesting who's the puppet and who's the puppeteer, because she tells him what to do, but Homelander he's Homelander, and he can follow what you say or not. And so she's able to stand up to him, but at the same time, like we see it in the second episode when we had the Truth Con, is like she's been involved in some other stuff.
Yeah.
and she ain't the most pro-human person out there either.
She's not. Oh no. She definitely believes in the Supes superiority, for sure.
Yeah. Which she even tells the Deep, like, Ashley can't talk to you like that.
Yeah. She's definitely Magneto.
Oh my God. Oh my God. The Deep never got rid of the octopus.
Oh, he didn't.
He didn't get rid of the octopus. Nope. Oh my God, he did not. Jeez. So on the flip side, the boys are being the boys and doing the boys stuff. Butcher, I don't know. I've probably, people have listened to me talk about the boys. I'm not necessarily team Homelander, but I find what's going on with him always so much more interesting than what's going on with the actual boys.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. It's like Butcher just I don't feel like they play with his character as well as they do with Homelander in terms of writing. But what are your thoughts about what's going on with this side of things?
Yeah, so Butcher, I mean, and we've talked about this before, and it's really, I mean, to your point, it's how as well as they write Homelander and all the things that go on with him. And I think part of that too is like, as I was watching the show, it was really like what I meant by earlier about the joke she's in on it. It's like how the show's like a mirror of our times. It really is like a mirror to our times and stuff. So I think because of that, you can explore so many things through the avatar of Homelander. Whereas I think Butcher, I found him an interesting character, but I've seen, and I think with Butcher, it's been seeing this evolution of this character from the character that, when we meet Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character, Joe, was a Kessler. Whenever we meet Kessler this season, he's essentially how Butcher was when we first met Butcher at the beginning of season 1. Because Kessler now wants to use Ryan to basically take down Homelander. Butcher has actually has changed, and we get these. He hears these visions, and then we do see that. We see Becca. We learn that's who he's hearing these voices and stuff, and from in these episodes. And we've seen how he's matured and changed to now where his goal now is to. Whereas Kessler wants to raise Ryan to be the Homeland Slayer, Butcher just wants that kid to just be able to be a kid and just have a normal life and not get wrapped up in all this craziness. So I'm actually liking that evolution of Butcher as we have progressed through these seasons.
Wow. I feel like I missed 2 scenes because I did not get that from Kessler over like their brief meeting in this episode. Did I miss something? Because he wasn't at all in the second episode.
In the first episode, when they first meet him, it was like that intro. He was that.
It's okay. I don't know. I don't know if I picked up on everything that you did during that conversation. Yeah. But yeah, I'm just glad that we're going to see James Dean Morgan again. He's always fun. Yeah, and then is it in this episode that Hughie's father goes to the emergency room, or is that next episode?
Yeah, Hughie's dad has a stroke in the first episode because whenever he was there with Newman, when they were doing the mission, that's when he got the phone call and he was let it go to voicemail. Yeah,
and Newman is close to VP, and right now, so CIA is not necessarily going after Homelander because they're focused on the fact that a Supe is second in line for the presidency. So there was a lot of talk about that.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I think some folk, I think President-elect Singer has to know that she's a Supe. He hasn't out and out said it, but yeah, I mean, he's the president-elect, and yeah, so, because he has the whole thing. Yeah, but getting back to just Newman and Hughie, and to your question, Hughie's dad had the stroke. Hughie and, Victoria have I had forgotten that they had Hughie had worked for her. I guess was that season 2 or season 3?
Season 3.
Okay, yeah, it's been so long. This show have been on, but I forgot the relationship. But the other thing, and I will say is a critique, is how much plot armor has been built up around these key characters. From like when Hughie and was trying to take Newman out with the acid and stuff, and even like when Homelander and Victoria were up on the stage, and I think. She can't pop his head and stuff. I mean, it just seems that it's just this just seems that there's a lot of plot armor. Whereas I think the earlier seasons of the show, they would take out some key characters and stuff. But now it's sort of like, okay, we're just gonna keep everybody around until season 5, and then we'll have our big blow up.
They killed Maeve in last season finale.
But no, but remember, she did not die. She just quietly retired.
She just quietly retired. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, remember? Because we thought she was killed when she took that one over.
When's the last time they killed a Cade character?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if they've ever done it.
I mean, I guess
arguably, yeah.
Well, Black Noir, but Black Noir. There was what was the Translucent? Was another one. So there have been a few.
They didn't kill him on screen though. That was talked about. I don't know. Yeah. I get what you're saying, and I agree, but I also don't think that they've been known to with those kind of stakes.
Yeah. Well, I think the plot armor for me is just as I will say, I enjoyed these episodes, but I will say that it's getting. They're making the right call to end this show with 5 seasons.
Yeah,
because things are starting to get better.
Yeah, it's more noticeable, especially when you're dealing with a team of humans versus Supes, and arguably some of the most powerful Supes. So that brings us to the second episode, Life Among the Spectics. Did you know the globalists put chemicals in our food to make us gay? Dakota Bob is a demon from hell, and the moon isn't real. Find out what they want and keep us from us. TruthCon. So my one thing about this episode, because we just got done talking about the first episode, love the introduction of Sister Sage, and then you're the smartest person in the world. You know these guys are tailing you. You figure it out, and so you set this up to get some Supes to help you and kill them. Sister Sage, please tell me, did you really think that Splinter and Firecracker would get the job done? Did you, or was that the best you could do given the circumstances? Because I don't know.
I think that was the best you could do. We are talking a bunch of
go ahead.
We are talking about about the truthers here and conspiracy theorists, so they're not the brightest bulbs.
I mean, she just literally gave Homelander a plan that caused 3 innocent people to get beaten to death by the Deep, A-Train, and Black Noir. And then in the next episode, it's like, oh, the boys are tailing me. So this goes back to your point about plot armor. That was kind of a way to get a good a creepy action sequence with a lot of nudity, and the boys end up escaping no one died. Yeah, it just bothered me.
Yeah, I mean the whole centipede thing. I mean, it reached a point where it's just like, I mean, it's like shock value for shock. It's lost this I'm just gonna say it. It didn't blow. It just kind of lost its shock value for me. I was like, oh, okay, y'all are doing this.
Right. Okay. Right. I don't know if the show has lost its shock value, because we didn't talk about the moment when those guys got beaten.
Yeah, which I was like, that was more shocking. That was more shocking to me than okay, I it worked better for me than the centipede. I'll just say. Right,
absolutely, because I think after you go through an episode like Herogasm, come on, that's a walk in the park. Yeah. Seeing that.
Or driving through a well.
yeah. So I don't think it was necessary, but it was such a brief moment. I was been there, done that, and then of course that leads to the action sequence, which is never that good anyway. So yeah.
I will say the second episode. I mean, there were the stuff, again, going back to Homelander and to your point earlier, it's just those are the scenes that pop with this show. and how that just such a dynamic character that he is, and seeing like whenever they were trying to like film the fake commercial, to get Ryan his first save, and how all that went on. And to your point too, as far as like, Homelander's never going to listen to Sister Sage. I mean, he'll listen to her, but he's still going to figure out a way to like work his way in there, because she was like, when they came up with the idea, whenever Deep's, they actually followed, it was Deep's idea, actually. Yeah. And it was actually better, but he was like, oh yeah, I'll go along. And then of course, when they actually execute it, he shows up, and because his narcissism won't allow him to let, even his own son to get a moment. Yeah, I mean, it's just that's what stood out for me in this episode. It's just like just a reminder how crazy this guy is. Right.
And also the people around him. I mean, everything going on with Ashley and the Deep and PETA's bestiality watch list.
Yeah.
The Deep is like a great comedic thing to throw in there. Just spice it up a little bit, make it more dynamic. And to an extent, Frenchie and Kamiko are that way for me. Like I find it interesting what's going on with them, but at the same time, I was a bit confused as to their relationship status, especially now that Frenchie's off hooking up with somebody else and she's allowing that. And I'm like, when did the breakup happen? Because the last thing I remember about you two is the musical episode.
Yeah, that was another thing that just seemed like that was a weird turn for me. I guess the thing with this second episode was really like the trauma episode, because we also have like Hugh, so we have Frenchie and Kamiko and Colin, Frenchie like killing Colin's parents and trying to deal with that. And you're right. I was like, when did their relationship status change? And then of course we do have the whole Hughie, his mom shows up, and of course going back to her leaving leaving Hughie and his dad years ago, and the whole power of attorney stuff going on there. So
I was just going to add in, I think Hughie, even more so than Butcher, has just become a stale character. Where, like, to make him relevant, you have to bring in the mother. No, I don't remember if you were asking, like, where is Hughie's mom? I forgot he even had a dad. like Hughie works when he's in a quasi father son, quasi brother, older brother dynamic with Butch. Yep. And then his relationship with Annie, and Annie has her own stuff going on with how she's put together a community center with the starlights, yet she still won't put on the suit. Like, but how this isn't Annie, like you have a name, use it. But she needs to figure out how to be at peace with using it in that way when she relates it so much back to Vault to technologies. So I feel like in these two episodes, what I'm trying to wrap my mind around is how they really had a clever through line with Homelander, and arguably with all of the Supes, even A-Train. I mean, A-Train got to share some scenes with Will Ferrell. I did not see that one coming.
I didn't either. Yeah.
I love that. It was such a good, I mean, I knew at first I was like, what? And then it took me just him starting to say his lines to be like, oh, this is another like Dawn of the Sevens movie set scene. Got it.
Yep.
Understood.
I love it. It was like, is this The Blind Side? And I was like, and then sure enough, like 2 minutes later, they were like, Will Ferrell was like, this Blind Side. I was like, okay.
And I think we talked about this last season, is like what they've managed to do with A-Train, because he's not the Deep. He's not there for comedic relief.
No.
He definitely is a cause for at least Hughie's whole journey throughout the series, but he's been on his own journey that arguably runs pretty parallel to Annie herself, where he put on the suit and it's never been the same. He's never been the same. His relationships with his siblings, his parents, it's just very, very different. And they're showing that again in this episode because he manages to give over the footage to Annie and Hughie that proves that what do they call them?
The homefronters
that were killed in the first episode were killed actually miles away.
Yeah.
So like I like that moment, and I can appreciate how they're also doing that in a very subtle way, where he's not a main character yet he's moving forward, and I just don't feel like they've figured out how to do that with the boys' characters as much as they have with the 7 characters.
Yeah, I would agree with. I mean, I agree with you with Hughie. I do feel like he was kind of adrift with these first episodes. I was like, I'm not feeling where you're going with Hughie on this. Annie, you're right. I think Annie and A-Train are kind of on a parallel track as far as just for different reasons, but they have become. Annie's she's done with Vault. A-Train, I think he's evolving and he's softening, and he will do things like he did appreciate what Annie and Hughie did. Whenever they could have busted him whenever he was there talking to his nephews and his brother, but they didn't. So we're seeing the evolution of A-Train to I foresee him flipping at some point. If it's not this season, he probably definitely will next season.
Yeah, it's just, I think what they're proving with Annie is very hard to cut that tie with Vought, especially in being a member of the 7, and that's all you know. Like, by the end of it, he'll definitely either be dead or have left Vought. But we'll see if he can get away with a quiet retirement like Lady Maeve.
I mean, there's Firecracker, the obvious analog for Jubilee, and her.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder. I am curious when we watch the 3rd episode, because the first 3 were all dropped at once, if our opinions will change about these first 2 episodes, just because typically. They do that because it's like one story arc. Yeah. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it was a good start. But as I was watching it, the edge, the satirical edge, and holding up a mirror to things, and they're very clear in his statements about this 4th season, especially when people are calling it woke garbage and that kind of stuff. He's like, well, yeah, I'm just call it what it is. I mean, Homelander's Trump. but I think and that's so I think some people are like, oh yeah, I get it now. They don't like. It is holding up the mirror. When I watched this show, it and Eric Kripke talked about how they started writing the show like in 2021, but I was like, did they go back and do ADR and put some updated references in where they can dub it where it fits, because it just feels like it's so so on point. And maybe and it's always. I've talked about this before. I mean, it's always been on the news about a lot of things, but it just really, this season really definitely is like on the nose with a lot of the commentary that is holding up. And so, some viewers can get it and still enjoy it, and some people can't, and they're like review bombing it and everything. But I at the end of the day, I mean, I think it's still a good show. But I think that some of the things that we called out this evening, as far as some of the story choices and some of the plot armor with some of these characters, does require it to like end next year, because we can only have this kind of thing go for so many episodes longer before Homelander and Butcher have their final confrontation, or Ryan will probably end up being the one taking Homelander out, because they're making Ryan the character that Black Noir was in the comic book, who actually was, because Ryan, well, in the comic, Black Noir was actually Homelander's clone in the comic book. Yeah. So
yeah. Well, I'm not gonna give judgment on the season, because if recollection serves me, I feel like I always have. It's hard to jump back into the boys.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of callbacks towards the end, so they don't necessarily really start off strong, but they end strong. So we'll see what happens. And on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will and Polk, WILLMPOLK.
You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at Scene and Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Threads at Scene_N_Nerd. And visit our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.